Hello everyone and welcome to the second and final leg of the 2025 Champions Chess Tour. We're in the finals and we have the duo that always reaches the finals, in the last 20 years, so to say, Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura, and this is game 4 of their match. So the first two games ended in a draw. Magnus won the third game and now Hikaru has the white pieces. If he wins, he can prolong the match, see maybe if he can take down Magnus in shorter time format. But if he doesn't, then Magnus wins the match. Now, this is the final, not to be confused with the grand final. So the winner of this event proceeds to the grand final, whereas the loser goes into the loser's bracket and can one day maybe find his way back to the grand final. So let's check it out. It's a brutal game, features many hidden tactics that were unobserved by the players. Let's see what we have here. So Hikaru with white opens with knight to f3. We have knight to f6, countering the Reti with a symmetrical approach. We have g3, pawn to b6, and bishop to g2. We have bishop to b7, and now pawn to d3. Slow playing it. We have pawn to c5, already very, very rare territory, and pawn to e4. In top-level chess, I found only one game with this particular setup. Peter Svidler played it once against Ivan Lopez Delgado, and the game ended in a draw. It was from the 2019 World Blitz Championship. Pawn to d6, we have castles, pawn to g6 by Magnus, we have knight to g5, preparing pawn to f4, and Magnus will not stand for it. He chases the knight away right away. We have knight h3, and now there are some games queen to c7 is a known move, also bishop to g7 is a known move. Interestingly, in all of the games where this position was reached, white was victorious. So can Magnus do something about the reputation of this particular line? He goes knight to c6, and it is now as of move 8 that we have a completely new game. So okay, Hikaru gets his f4 in, we have pawn to e6, pawn to c3, nicely preparing d4 at some point, also nicely controlling the knight on c6, bishop to g7, and queen to e2. We have castles kingside by Magnus, and Hikaru strikes with pawn to g4. And this is as good as Hikaru could have hoped for the last game, where he needs a win with white to continue the match. It's a completely offbeat position. He starts advancing on the king side. This is where he wants to be. And usually we say that the best reply to a flank attack is to strike in the center. But here Magnus strikes on the queen side, pawn to b5. So he wants to challenge Hikaru's construction with pawn to b4. Okay, Hikaru goes g5, knight h7, captures, and now queen to g4. Sort of preparing f5, but Magnus not buying it. He just continues with pawn to b4. And indeed, if you try pawn to f5, it seems like it's a very nice move, but the problem is after some captures, there's bishop captures on c1. And even if you continue, let's say captures, and captures with check, after king to h8, there's just no good reply. If bishop to e4, you threaten checkmate, bishop e3 check, and white resigns. You either move the king and lose the rook, or you play king g2 and then rook g8 traps the white queen, or rather, skewers it. So after b4, we have queen to g3, and now b captures. We have b captures and bishop to a6. Magnus goes after the d3 pawn, lets Hikaru have this diagonal all to himself, and now is definitely the time to execute pawn to f5, but Hikaru plays knight to d2. He wants to further prepare it. Once the knight comes to f3, you might have better chances with more attackers. Queen to a5, Magnus just puts pressure. He doesn't care what's happening on the king side. Bishop to b2, and here Magnus played queen to b5, just putting pressure on this d3 pawn. There is a slight improvement to this position, and the bishop to b2 can even be considered a mistake. Maybe not at this time format, because players just have to make quick moves. But what would you play here? Can you find an improvement on Magnus's queen b5 move while I give you a couple of seconds? So there was this interesting queen to b6 move. And it seems like, okay, you're attacking the bishop, you're attacking, you're threatening pawn to c4 check, but does it really do all that much once the bishop is moved? I mean, c4 check can be just met with d4. Well, there's bishop captures on d3, it's a free pawn, and that's it. White has no compensation for this pawn. If you capture the bishop, then c4 wins the white queen as the white king is in check, so that's, a pretty big deal. So this would have been a slight improvement. You basically win the d3 pawn without actively going for the d3 pawn, which is what Magnus did. So here Hikaru just plays knight c4, defends the bishop and the d3 pawn, knight to a5 attacking the knight, and here Hikaru trades. Knight captures, queen captures, and pawn to c4 closes the diagonal, and now Magnus strikes with pawn to e5. He invites Hikaru to advance the pawn to f5, we have f5, and now queen to d2, puts pressure on the knight on a5, f captures on g6, Hikaru offers the knight on a5, but not really, as the knight on h7 is also hanging. So we have f captures, queen captures, and king to h8. So Magnus does get his king opened up, but Hikaru's king is already opened, and if rook g8 lands, could be very, very dangerous. So what can Hikaru do? He goes knight b3, gets his knight out of harm's way with tempo, as the queen is now attacked, and queen to e3 with check. I think Magnus here was also playing a little bit on the fact that he's leading the match and he doesn't necessarily need a win, but bishop to e3 and grabbing the pawn, nothing wrong with that. There's no way for Hikaru to actually apply any pressure here. It does look dangerous. Rook d1, you attack the queen, you maybe go after the d6 pawn, but it is perfectly fine. So after knight b3, queen to e3 check by Magnus, king to h1, and now rook to g8. Okay, what can Hikaru do here? Queen to h5, and now Magnus could just go rook a to f8, and I think that's the move that he would play if he wasn't playing for a match victory rather than just, focusing on this one game. But he goes for rook captures on g2. It looks like a position that you're either drawing or, Hikaru gives you a chance and you're going to win. Unfortunately for Magnus, this move loses the game for him. But again, we witness the great Magnus effect. Hikaru plays king captures on g2, rook to g8 with check, king to h1, and now bishop to c8 by Magnus. And Hikaru just plays rook to g1, rook to f3. He goes after the queen and also adds another defender to the knight on h3, and Magnus just goes queen to e2. Now the rook cannot move as the queen on h5 would hang. So rook to g1, Hikaru offers a trade, and Magnus just strikes with bishop to g4, and he was in this position with 3 minutes, over 3 minutes on the clock, that Hikaru Nakamura resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Or so you think, as your opponent is Magnus Carlsen, but this is a completely winning position for Hikaru, but Magnus convinced him that, he was playing fast, he was playing all of these great moves, that he is lost. But it is in fact Magnus who is lost here. In case you haven't seen the game already, what do you play here as white? There's only one way to win. Every other move loses. What do you play? The move is rook f to g3. And after this move, there is nothing Magnus can do. If you try any of the other ideas, let's say, if you just capture the queen, of course, then just rook captures, you're down a queen. If rook captures, then queen captures on f3 comes with check. Obviously, that's not working either. If king g1, bishop to e3 check, and you just slowly but surely checkmate the white king, rook g1, and now queen captures or rook captures will be checkmate. The key here is rook f to g3, and here Magnus can just resign. There is nothing that he can do here. He can maybe trade down into a losing endgame. For example, queen f3 check is one move that allows him to stay in the game without losing material. But then just a rook captures, bishop captures on h5, and then the rooks get traded off, captures, and you have, okay, a bishop pair and a knight versus a knight pair and a rook. So Magnus would be down in exchange and down a pawn. In a position that is completely winning for white. Of course, any position that's completely winning against Magnus, you will have to, work for your meal. But yeah, Hikaru definitely, after this bishop to g4 move, resigned in a completely winning position. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed. Magnus proceeds to the grand final. Hikaru goes into the losers bracket, where he will probably, as usual, find his way back to the grand final, and then we will again have the Magnus versus Hikaru final, as we always do. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very nicely played by both of them, but I mean, bishop to g4. If there ever was a Magnus effect move, bishop to g4 is definitely the one that takes the crown. Not only is it, a bad move, it loses the game completely. And, if Hikaru had a couple of seconds, okay, but with almost 3.5 minutes, this is, I mean, wow. Hats off to the great Magnus. So yeah, I would like to thank Douglas Van Van Huysen, Samuel Kamuli, Nidli Kumar, Marcus Shib, and Mariusz Klimek for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.